we're going to have some answers to be able to provide to you today, but due to the horrific nature of the event, we don't have a complete answer to every question that the community has and would like to have answered, that we would like to have answered. It's frustrating. We can't know every possible thing, why it happened, exactly what unfolded, but there will be some answers and hopefully bring some level of closure. Of course, even if we had all the answers, that wouldn't really take away from the tragedy and the mourning that happened in our community. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our State Fire Marshal, Steve Jones, to give a brief overview of the findings from their investigation. And then following that, we'll have our fire chief come up and share some thoughts. But with that, Steve Jones, please come up.
Hey everyone, Lauren Moss, Joshua Short with you. We are listening in to the press conference, the news conference involving the Smith6 fire, as it's been known here in South Bend. And so we're getting an update right now. We're going to dip back in. We just wanted to let you guys know what we're looking for on the other side of this, potentially a cause and a timeline as well.
Let's listen to the State Fire Marshal.
Fires and save lives, but I'm Steve Jones, the Indiana State Fire Marshal, and I'm here today to provide an update on the tragic occurrence that occurred on January 21st at 222 LaPorte Avenue here in South Bend. First and foremost, I want to express condolences to the Smith family. It's a devastating loss. And loss of their children, Davida, Faith, Demetrius, Deontay, D'Angelo, and Angel. As a parent and grandparent myself, I cannot begin to imagine the profound grief and anguish the Smith family is experiencing. My heart goes out to them during this incredibly difficult time. To the South Bend community, I know this tragedy has shaken you to the core. The loss of 6 young lives is absolutely heartbreaking. Please know that we grieve alongside of you, and we have worked tirelessly to determine what happened and how the fire started. We understand everyone's interest in this matter and appreciate your patience. To ensure fairness to everyone involved, we can only share information directly related to the facts of the investigation at this stage. While the investigation report remains confidential to protect parties involved, it will be made available through proper legal channels when appropriate. We thank you for your understanding as we work to handle this matter with the utmost care and professionalism. The South Bend Fire Department requested the Indiana State Fire Marshal's Office to help determine the cause and origin of this fire. The jurisdiction of my office ends outside of those parameters, and any additional actions related to the case will not impact our determinations. Before detailing our findings, it's important to explain that the investigation has led to a cause undetermined. This is a common determination in fire investigations when a definitive cause cannot be established despite exhaustive efforts. A cause undetermined ruling does not reflect on the quality or thoroughness of the investigation, but reinforces the fact that fire investigation is a scientific endeavor that requires a specific level of certainty to be achieved based upon definite evidence to correctly identify the cause of the fire. In short, this cause determination reflects the fact that the evidence does not point definitively in one direction or another as to what exactly ignited the fire. This is because more than one potential cause was identified in the area of origin, and there is simply not enough scientific data to identify a single ignition source. We have conducted an exhaustive and meticulous examination of the scene. working diligently to piece together exactly what happened that terrible night. Our team, in collaboration with ATF and South Bend fire investigators, we've invested thousands of hours in this case, leaving no stone unturned in the quest for answers. In an investigation of this magnitude, it is normal and expected for the community to want to hear clear answers to what started the fire. Unfortunately, in fire investigations, those are not always available due to the nature of the incident, the extent of the fire, and from battling the blaze of the fire, and a lack of scientific evidence once the fire is extinguished. While we do not know all the definitive answers, here are some key findings from our investigation. Number one, the fire started in the family and dining room area of the house. Number two, we know there has been a lot of discussion and curiosity about smoke detectors and whether they worked. While some were found in a home, we cannot determine what sounded, if anything sounded, during the event. Witnesses on the scene never heard a smoke alarm. The father did not hear a smoke alarm, nor could a smoke alarm be heard on the 911 call that originated from the house. Number three, there were electrical items that were identified as potential ignition sources, but it could not be proved definitively. And then number four, there is no evidence of criminal activity or arson that was found in the investigation. One of the things we wanted to do is to be able to talk about how the fire progressed. And there was a video camera on the church across the street with the house in view. And so we wanted to give kind of the background and how this fire took place to help explain why this fire was such a tragedy. And this is timelines from the video across the street. That at 6:08:56, there is a glow that you can notice invisible in that window on the south side of the house. You can't see it from the picture, but when you watch the video, you can see a small glow originate. Family's upstairs, fire's downstairs. At 6:10:10, it's obvious we have a large volume of fire and smoke in the house. Nobody is aware of the fire that's going on downstairs. At 6:10:49, the flames are seen and you can see there's smoke coming out of the house. Again, nobody is aware that there is a fire downstairs. At 6:10:50, the southeast window fails and fire vents from the window. And this is on the rear of the house that the fire's gotten so big and so hot that the window has broken downstairs. Still, nobody knows there's a fire going on inside of the house. At 6:11:02 p.m., the south window fails and fire vents from the window. So now that I've got more heat, we have now caused more windows to break on the first floor. At 6:11:33, there's activity that can be seen in the video from this window right here on the second floor. So we know at this point they're aware of something going on downstairs. At 6:11:54, large fire visible on the first floor, southwest window, and a person is seen hanging from the window from the second story. At 6:11:57, the father is seen dropping down from the south second-story window and dropping outside of the house. At 6:12:53, the father is seen trying to gain entry to the house and trying to rescue his children. At 6:14:49 p.m., a 911 call is made. First floor is engulfed in flames, and several individuals are seen, just bystanders, trying to gain access to help the father save his children. At 6:16:42, the fire department is dispatched. And you can see at the time of dispatch, we have a huge volume of fire on that first floor of the home. At 6:17:43, the fire department arrives. It's interesting to note that the fire department was on scene after dispatch within 1 minute of dispatch. But you can see the volume of fire that they have on the first floor at the time the fire department arrived. And I think you can see from the fire growth from the time we first noticed to the time the fire department arrived, that fire was just absolutely huge. And so it was a very difficult incident. It's important to note that the fire was already well developed by the time emergency services were called. As evidenced by the timeline of fire progression, the fire had spread significantly and vented through multiple windows before the fire department was even dispatched. South Bend Fire Department was swift and professional in their response, with every available resource deployed to combat the blaze. The fire department's actions that night reflect the highest standards of emergency response and dedication to public safety, even in the face of overwhelming circumstances and severe weather conditions that were beyond their control. That's the facts as we know them. Moving forward from here, while we cannot provide definitive cause, our investigation has been thorough and methodical. Through fire investigations, it can be an ongoing process, and new evidence could emerge, which we currently exhausted all available investigative avenues. Moving forward from here, we encourage residents to focus on prevention and safety. Ensure your smoke detectors are working. Practice family fire drills, and make for sure exits are clear. These simple steps save lives. We recognize this incident has deeply affected the South Bend community, and we hope in providing these findings, we will help this community in the state of Indiana to begin a healing process and to move forward and try to do those things that are fire safe and be able to prevent other lives from being lost. At this time, I'd like to ask he's a brother in the firehouse, right? Chief Buchanan to come up and make a few comments.
Good afternoon. Still good morning. Thank you, Fire Marshal Jones. South Bend Fire Department take great pride in what they do. It's not an easy job, but it's one that we all were ordained and permitted to do on behalf of our community. And we do it to the best of our abilities and we appreciate our citizens having, for the most part, supporting us when we have to go through something of this magnitude. This is tremendous not only for the community, but also for the members of the South Bend Fire Department. We live with this tragedy each and every day. We do not take it lightly. We still have firefighters that are still struggling mentally and physically with this event from that fatal night. I submitted a quote to the Fire Marshal's office in regard to this incident, and for the most part it stipulates, communities such as ours are strengthened by how they overcome adversity and come together to support one another after tragic events. Working together through public education and fire prevention will help these events from occurring more often and will always be the top priority of the dedicated men and women of the South Bend Fire Department. One thing I'd like to stipulate that Fire Marshal Jones pointed out was fire and life safety, and having something as simple as a working smoke alarm on each floor of your home. In the past, we have issued out smoke alarms and carbon monoxide detectors to individuals wanting them, only to at times go into their homes and find these smoke alarms and carbon monoxide detectors sitting on a dresser, a bureau, a counter, or somewhere where it's not operating the way that it's supposed to. So therefore, we started the smoke alarm program within our Fire Prevention Bureau, where we have free smoke alarms available, but they are not available to take out. They are available to have one of our qualified technicians or firefighters come to your residence, install them where they are to be installed, where they are properly installed correctly and functional before that individual will leave that home, but also to talk over a fire escape plan with the family members. The one thing we take for granted sometimes is that as adults, we may know what to do in case of a fire. And even though your children may come to fire stations on numerous field trip opportunities and they get information and they'll have a public education officer teach them about fire safety, but a lot of times we fall short on really giving them all of the information that they really need when they need it. It used to be stop, drop, and fall. That's all that pretty much kids knew back in the day. Well, we've evolved from that, and we are taking school-age children and teaching them and educating them on not just stop, drop, and roll, rather, but also educating them on how and what to do in case of a fire in their homes. Having that general discussion with their parents, not only about, the good things that went on in school or maybe some of the things that they endured during school, but having a general, honest conversation with their parents about something that may save their lives. Life is very precious. We're all here today because of the lives that was took, the lives that was lost, the families that was affected, the community that was affected by what happened on that unfortunate night. But we should not leave here with not only that in mind, but we should leave here thinking, how can we prevent that from happening again? And that would mean all of us should have a part in that. And not just the fire department, or not just certain people, or not just status quo persons in our community that don't have the means or don't have the necessities to be able to afford certain things. This is not about that. And as long as I'm the fire chief, South Bend Fire Department, I will always be an advocate for those that don't have and those that need. And if we have the ability to provide those, we should be doing it. It shouldn't be about how much they cost. It shouldn't be about, well, the landlord should provide these things. We, as a fire department, I feel is a responsibility to make sure that each resident has a working smoke alarm and carbon monoxide detector. So I am appealing to the public. If you have not checked your smoke alarm, and if you believe that it may work or may not work, find out for sure if it does before it's too late. Thank you.
We'd like to take this time to open it up for some questions. Some of the specifics about the investigation we can't talk about, but if the media has a few questions, that we'll take 4 or 5 questions that to see if we can field and offer up some answers.
Sorry.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
I simply wanted to clarify the timestamp on the camera across the street.
Uh-huh.
So from the time that there was a little glimmer in the window to the fire department arriving was how many minutes?
I can't recall specifically. These pictures will be made available on our website, I think. That
They're included in the release.
Yeah, they'll be included in a release, so you can reference the exact time frames and be able to.
That is a clock and not the time code for the tape.
Yeah, that's the clock. So, yes, ma'am.
So in a February 15th release, you guys said you were aware of the documented history of electrical issues and that you didn't determine if those were resolved before the incident. Has that been determined at all?
The specifics again of the investigation, we're not going to get into the specifics of that. But it's important to know, in order for us to determine the exact cause scientifically, we got to be able to demonstrate that. And this fire, just because it got so big in the intensity, we could not come to a scientific definitive answer as to exactly what the cause of the fire was. Yes, go ahead.
So at this point, is the investigation totally wrapped up, or kind of, will things still be looked at after here?
We're still looking at things, and it's like anything else. More information could come available. So we, especially a fire of this magnitude, it deserves our utmost attention. And we, right now, we have turned every stone over that we absolutely can on this case. And so what could happen in the future, I can't really go into that because I don't know what that might be. But up until this point, we've conducted a very thorough investigation, and this is where we've landed right now.
Could I ask what those specifics could you be looking at moving forward? Like, what are those things that?
I don't want to get into hypotheticals. I just want to stick with the facts that we know today. Yes, sir.
What's the case, this underlying legal case that's preventing you from telling us more details?
Well, it's just all of our fire investigations is there's a lot of sensitive information, sensitive to the family. And so we have our website. If somebody would like to get a copy, that they can submit who they are and the reasons why, and our legal team will look at it and determine who can get a copy of that report. But there's a process for that. Yes, sir.
Obviously, the cause is still, has been determined, undetermined. But are there any causes that you've been able to rule out at this point, or is every single potential cause still on the table?
Well, and there's nothing, like I said, that would make it a criminal or an arson. Don't see any indication. That's the facts as we know them today. And that's why fire investigations is, my fire investigators are scientists out there working, looking at a lot of different things. And so if we've got to have definitive scientific things that demonstrate the cause of the fire. We don't have one specific, and so that's why this case is landed where it is currently. So.
Are your results similar to those investigations done by the insurance companies? Do you in any way
Our investigation typically is independent of insurance company, so that's, I really don't have answers for that, but our investigation is independent, working with South Bend Fire investigators, the fire department, and ATF on this case.
Are there any?
Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, so go ahead.
I'm wondering if you have any way to kind of explain, you had said that, there were more than one potential cause, but you couldn't determine anything scientifically. What does it mean to really be able to determine this is the cause of the fire? And why was that burden of proof, I guess, not able to be met in this case?
Well, and I'll speak generally, is when we have a fire, like all the electrical wires fall down on the ground and there's a lot of different electrical components, and there's no definitive to point to that we could find. And so ruling out, we don't see anything.
All right, everybody, we are in the newsroom here. We are listening to part of this news conference. You just watched it with us on the update on the Smith6 fire from early this year, in January. And for those of you who are just joining us, we have been following this story literally since the night that it happened. And it seems just like yesterday, honestly. When you know where you were, I knew where I was when this all happened.
I mean, yeah, they said in the news conference today, this has been a story that has deeply affected the entire community. We even heard how it's affected the firefighters. Some of them to this day are still struggling mentally and physically. Big key takeaways, of course,
key takeaways,
no definitive cause found. Cause undetermined, but they can rule out any criminal activity and rule out arson.
And one of the things that a lot of people had questions about was where was the dad in all this? And I think today we found out a lot of that information. In fact, I'll be honest with you, we're just getting an email from the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, and in that it talks about what we just learned, what we just heard from Steve Jones, who's a fire marshal appointed from Marion County. He talked about how there was a step-by-step from the camera across the street at the church.
Right.
You know where this is, off LaPorte Avenue in South Bend, if you're familiar with the city. And that is literally one of the saving graces of this investigation, because other than that, you have the word of mouth. One of the things we do know out of this key takeaway is that they did not, or there's no proof on whether or not the fire alarms inside the home were working or not.
Right.
Witnesses say they did not hear fire alarms. So that is something we do know from witnesses, but they cannot confirm, deny, or even verify at this point whether or not those alarms work, but there were alarms in the home. The sad part about this is that there was a TikTok of what took place, and the time to me that stood out was 6:08, when the glow was seen on that church camera, that there was a fire that was sparked somehow, and they had no knowledge. We can confirm now something that the father did tell us, something that a lot of people had questions about, something that a lot of you quite frankly, wasn't sure or not you could believe. They were all upstairs.
Yeah, right.
He was inside the home with his 6 children inside of a room, and they had no knowledge when that fire broke out.
We know that from the video from the church, because it shows the father actually jumping out of that 2nd-story window.
Yeah, and that was compelling.
It also showed him trying to go back in to get the kids, but
this is
fire
when we say we have to be journalists. This is what we mean, right? We have to go based off of fact and fact only. We can't go off rumor or supposition or what you think may have happened. We only go based off of fact. And we had an exclusive interview with that father, sat down with me in the studio we're standing next to. And he said that he was upstairs. They were watching a movie, and that they didn't know anything that was going on until the moment that this happened. Now, a lot of people can do their own investigation on whether or not he jumped out of the window alone and should have grabbed his kid. That's another story. But the facts are this. He was home. He was in that home when this all took place. Another thing is they looked through what happened shortly after 6:10. They went minute by minute and showed as that fire grew and expanded so quickly what was happening, what was taking place at that time. And it's unfortunate because police and fire officials got there, it sounds like within minutes, obviously, but just still, you can't wrap your head around just how quickly this spread.
They said the fire was so well developed by the time crews even got there. They said it was so big and so hot that windows downstairs were blown out within minutes.
Within minutes. It's really tough. I want to go back and show you guys, if I can, This is the mayor who's there. That is the chief on the left, Fire Chief Buchanan, on your left there in that room. They've just wrapped up this news conference. We were on the air as well with this news conference, which you saw on Channel 16. Go ahead.
I thought Chief Buchanan, hearing from him, you can even hear it in his voice how he's still affected. He said he's now making it his mission that every home in South Bend, in his area, has a working smoke detector. That is how deeply this whole case has affected his department, where he's like, I don't want to even take that risk anymore. If you want to know, if you're not sure if you're working, give us a call. We were going to go out there and install them for free.
And that's the thing about this, I think this people need to know, is that with a result of this tragedy, and we've talked about this before on the air, the result of this tragedy led to something that this community, I think, did a wonderful job of, and that's reminding folks of the little things, the stop, drop, and roll, right? The fire safety, the fire prevention, things
the
to do.
escape plan,
yeah,
right? Like
don't
that's
forget what smoke smells like, right?
Yeah, he emphasized that today. He said, you know, even stop, drop, and roll, not enough anymore. You need an escape plan. If something happens like this, if a fire's on the first floor, how are you going to get out of that second story?
I'm going to interrupt you. That is David Smith. That is the father of the 6 children right there.
Yeah.
He just shook the hand of the fire marshal, Steve Smith, there just a moment ago. Steve Jones, forgive me. Steve Jones right there with the glasses on the right. You can see WUBS, the station director there in that video. Sylvester is there. You can see some of the clergy of the community there as well. Deanna Jones, a couple other folks. You see Lynn Coleman there. One of the many questions now is, of course, talking about, now that this investigation is complete, what happens with the money, right? And the money has been kept in a safe bank, literally a bank. So many of you asked us those questions about the money and donations to him and his family after this fire took place, and so we're working on that right now as well. But I'm going to take this so you guys can see the close-up. That is David Smith right here. That is the father who tried to save his kids, who tried to go back in that home, and we have video proof of it.
Right.
Something that a lot of people say didn't happen, happened.
I mean, this is a man, again, who has lost now 6 kids.
Yeah.
It's just heartbreaking.
In the worst of ways. I'm going to show you the video, and it's going to be hard to watch. I'm going to stay here if we can just for a couple more seconds. Again, what you're seeing here, and Don, our photojournalist, as he's moving his camera, I'm going to show the night of this fire, which is, again, hard to look at. We're not going to show too many images beyond this next few images you're going to see there. And actually, I want you to, we're going to go back to this. Let's see if we can hear from Dad really quickly.
What is your emotions and thoughts on that?
I'm going to agree with like the Chief Marshal said. Things take time, and you can't determine something that you can't see right.
What do you want the community to know about what your life's going to be?
Living hell. Well, I'm getting over it. I'm doing better now.
How are you doing that? How are you getting over it?
Well, I've worked, do things at the Portland House. I'll be putting up the community things for my kids and keeping the area. You know, let people know this accident happened there. I put their pictures and crosses and stuff up. But I got to put the cross back up because we took it down for the demolition. But I got the pictures and stuff back up. And
Keeping their memories alive.
I look at their picture every day and talk to them.
What do you say you miss most?
All of them. All of them. The way they act, the things I had to do, and from yelling at them, telling them clean up, pick up, you know, the everyday thing. But we did a lot together as a family. We always went fishing and camping and stuff like that when I was back home.
What was it like sitting through today's press conference, seeing the screenshots, hearing kind of the minute-by-minute breakdown?
Too much emotion. That's why I walked out. I didn't want y'all to see me crying.
How are you feeling just after this, just moving forward?
Well, I'm still sad at heart, but I got strong supporters, like my attorney right here. Mr. Coleman, you know, he always let me link. Can we talk about something else?
You don't have to talk at all. That's enough questions. Thank you very much.
You could see it was really hard for him to speak at the end there. He mentioned Lynn Coleman by name. You see Lynn Coleman there in that image, who was leaving out with him, along with a couple other folks as well, who, quite frankly, I mean, he said he walked out at one point.
Yeah.
He walked out
It was
at one
too
point.
emotional.
He said it was too emotional, and that says a lot. Mark Peterson was there, and that was how we were able to get a mic on him and listen in there at the end of that news conference. It is tough, obviously, for that father of 6 to have lost his 6 kids in that fire, and they didn't even know that fire was going on after minutes after it started.
Yeah.
And I think that's the tough part to all this. I think that when you look at what has taken place over the last several months since January, and he was starting to speak on it there, I think, before he was told he didn't have to answer any more questions and he was ushered out. I think he was starting to speak on the community and how there are two sides to this community sometimes, right? And I think there are so many people who put labels on him unjustly as a result of the investigation that wasn't complete.
Listen, people had questions, right? How
Fair.
do 6 kids die in a fire? One
Fair.
person makes it out and it's the dad, and people were saying, well, you know, as a parent, how can you run out and leave your kids in there? So there were questions like that. But now we can hear it from the state fire marshal. No criminal activity when it comes to this tragedy, no signs of arson. And we did see from that church surveillance video, the father tried running back in.
I think that's the most telling part to all of this, is that you've got a father who was trying to be a father in that moment. And I think that one of the heartbreaking things about it is that, yes, he was able to make it out. And I think in retrospect, you look at it and say, man alive, if I was in that position. But we can't say that. You can't put yourself in that position. And I tell you this, when you look at the video and you see
You see just how fast
you see
it
how
spread.
quickly it spread, and we're going to show you some of that tonight, starting at 4 o'clock. In fact, here in the noon show, I believe our producers behind us are working on getting those images in from the Department of Homeland Security. The time with which this fire grew so quickly.
Seconds count when it comes to emergencies like this, where you don't even always have time to think about what's next or what to do, right?
If you're just catching up on what we're doing here, we're just kind of rehashing the very latest from this news conference. Lauren Moss, Joshua Short with you in our newsroom. We can tell you that we have learned, and this is what's important. You're going to see it pop up here at the bottom of the screen. This is from the fire marshal, literally in the last half hour.
Right, we had big takeaways, 4 takeaways in fact. So let's go from the top.
Sure.
One thing we can tell you about this, the fire started in the family dining room. That's downstairs. The entire family, the father and 6 kids, were upstairs. The next key takeaway, discussions about smoke detectors. They cannot determine if any went off during event. Witnesses never heard one. Father never heard one, nor did dispatchers when 911
The 911
was
call,
called.
that's important.
Now, we know that the home had electrical issues in the past. However, it cannot be proved as a direct cause. There was not one thing that was a direct cause, which is, by the way, not uncommon when it comes to fire investigations, because things burn, right? It's hard to exactly tell what happens. And then, of course, the biggest takeaway of today is right there.
Yeah, you can see
no
it.
evidence.
No evidence there, and I think that's the big takeaway of this entire thing. And no evidence of criminal activity or arson is suspected at this time. You're looking at the 6 faces who we're talking about here, and if I can bring them up so you can see them full. These are the 6: Demetris, Davita, Angel, Deontay, Faith, and D'Angelo. David Smith lost all 6 of these kids in the worst way, in the absolute worst way. And what you're looking at the top left is some file footage from not even a day after, from the vigil and community gatherings from so many people who wrapped their arms around this man and his family.
Yeah, of course, you know, we're thinking of the dad when it comes to these, but this is a story, a tragedy that has affected the entire community. People heard about this, and of course these 6 kids, a majority of them went to school, besides the little babies, of course, and so these kids have friends, classmates, friends from other gatherings. It has deeply affected really everyone in the community, and like I said, when we first started this, Chief Buchanan even talked about how it affected the firefighters who responded to that scene, saying to this day, almost a year later, some of them are still struggling mentally and physically and seeking help, seeking resources from that tragedy.
And one of the things I can tell you is that he also made that public appeal. You talked about it, smoke alarms. Smoke alarms are so important.
You got to make sure they're working. I mean, you can have them in your house, right? But just because you have them in the house doesn't mean it's always working smoothly.
Yeah.
Get those checked. Make sure that they work, because It can truly make a difference in these tragedies.
We're working to re-rack one of the things that the fire marshal said here, and as soon as it starts, I'm going to play it just in case you missed it at the top there. One of the other things I want to mention here, practicing fire drills. We're starting to see that re-implemented in some of the school systems and corporations. We've done our extensive reporting, and I will tell you that we have done some really great reporting that have not only put this in perspective, but also given the attention to the fire prevention and the importance of knowledge about fires and what does smoke smell like and some of the telltale signs of fires. Those are the things that we want to pay attention to, and we did it for weeks after this.
Drill it into kids' heads. I mean, we heard Chief even say, we know stop, drop, and roll, right? A lot of kids hear that often. Practice it, actually do it, put it into motion. And not only that, have an escape plan.
Yeah.
You got to know the exits, how to get out. Hey, if a fire started over here in my house, how am I getting out of this direction?
One of the things that I took note of is there were electrical sources that could have been a precipitating factor in what we saw in the fire that we ended up seeing.
South Bend Tribune, our partners, did a huge investigative piece on this.
Yeah, and they did a deep dive into how they, in the past, that there were inspections done that were failed from that home. And you can see all that reported at WNDU.com after this, of course. But that puts in perspective that this home was already under the magnifying glass. And they asked, I think one of the reporters in the room asked that question. They can't give a lot of the specifics because there's still an investigation actively underway.
Right.
I want to go briefly to this. This is something that we're bringing back here. If you could turn that, this is some of the initial words from the fire marshal.
Okay.
Number 2, we know there has been a lot of discussion and curiosity about smoke detectors and whether they worked. While some were found in a home, we cannot determine what sounded, if anything sounded, during the event. Witnesses on the scene never heard a smoke alarm. The father did not hear a smoke alarm. Nor could a smoke alarm be heard on the 911 call that originated from the house. Number 3, there were electrical items that were identified as potential ignition sources, but it could not be proved definitively. And then number 4, there is no evidence of criminal activity or arson that was found in the investigation.
Okay, so that was just a little bit, I wanted to make sure you guys heard that. That was from the fire marshal earlier today. That was from Steve Jones, who is the state fire marshal. Was requested by the South Bend Fire Department to assist and lead this investigation into a potential cause. We are just getting the pictures, showing you the step-by-step timeline that you just referenced, Lauren Moss, just a couple seconds ago.
And it shows just how quickly this fire grew. And the firefighters kept saying how hot and how massive this fire was. So let's take a look at some of those.
So we're gonna show you this, and I want to start with this. This is when, and I'm going to get rid of this lower third just for a second. So if you're joining us here in the next couple minutes, we'll bring it back up. This is at 6:08:56, okay? There is a glow that is visible in a window, okay? And it's hard to see it in this image which window, but we can tell you based on what we know. It's the bottom floor. So the home we're looking at is on the bottom left of this. You're seeing the image. And it might be the glow that you're starting to see briefly near the front. You see the front 2 windows. You see a white door. Next to that to the right, you see 2 windows, and then you see a side window. If you look at that window, there's a small hue, a yellow-orangish hue. That is what officials, investigators believe to be the spark, the initial fire. At this point, upstairs, the entire family is there. The entire family is upstairs and don't know that this is taking place. But that is the initial fire. Lauren, this is a couple minutes later.
In 2 minutes, look, you can see massive flames coming from the rear of the home, the side of the home. And again, this is in less than 2 minutes, right? So you could see the difference right here. If the family, they said that they were all upstairs, and fire marshal
Steve
confirming
Jones, he confirmed that, yeah.
You can see if the family's upstairs, how are they going to get downstairs with that?
And we're just bringing us up here so you get obviously get a visibility of where we are in the newsroom if you're just joining us. So on the left side of your screen are the pictures that we're just getting. This is at 6:10. The smoke is visible along with the fire itself. You see it coming out of that window there. We're seeing these pictures for the first time. So I am going through them as you are. This is,
Wow.
I mean,
Within seconds.
within
that
seconds. So
smoke,
this
that's
was
right.
at 6:10:10. This is, if I'm doing my math correctly, less than 30 seconds later, or just about 30 seconds later.
And you could look at the difference even from the flame size.
Yeah, I mean, just like that, it grew quickly.
Yeah.
We're looking now, so again, this is at 6:10:49. This is at 6:10:50.
When
The
the
window
window's
falls
white.
out. And what do you need, right? When you go back to chemistry and you go back to grade school oxygen, right? You see that, just like that, that window is broken. Bad news at this point. Mind you, the family upstairs, all 6 kids and dad, still don't know what's going on. Maybe they're just now hearing the window break. But at this point, up to 6:10, they did not realize there was a fire downstairs.
And especially if no smoke alarms were heard, they really would have no idea.
More of pictures here. I'm going to take this so you guys can see it. More windows fall out. The south window falls. And then this is at 6:11. We're going to go less than 20 seconds later. Activity can be seen on the second floor. The activity, we don't know specifically what that means, but based on what the fire marshal said, this is movement. This means people are now understanding something's
Right.
going on.
Maybe smelling.
And at this
something.
point, the fire's coming right up to the second floor window. If you don't smell it at this point, you're seeing something,
Yeah.
right? And this is the tough part of this, is when you begin to see visible smoke, fire, and a person hanging from the second
Wow.
floor window.
And we know that now is Dad.
And that is Dad. And it is almost hard to tell, but Dad is hanging from that second floor. I believe we have the mayor who's going to speak momentarily, so we're going to dip into that in a second, Lauren.
Okay.
If you can have that
Okay.
ready to go just in case.
Cause undetermined.
Here we go. Give me
Okay.
1 second,
We'll
folks.
go to him.
Take out of this investigation.
Well, we appreciate the state fire marshal and his team for doing a meticulous investigation, leaving no stone unturned, and exhausting all the avenues of investigation that they had. Unfortunately, we don't have all the answers that we would hope for, but we do have some answers. There's some idea of what happened that evening and how this happened and how we would be able to prevent these types of tragedies from happening here in the future in South Bend.
What did you learn that you didn't know?
Well, you know, we always know the importance of smoke detectors, but it's a critical reminder that we all make sure that our smoke detectors are operating. You know, they have their batteries in there, they're operational, and that they're on every floor of the residence. And so making sure that, you know, of course, this wasn't at night when people were sleeping. This was in the, I guess, mid-evening hour. And so no indication necessarily that people were sleeping, but even when you're awake, a fire can grow so quickly, and by the time you know it, it can be overwhelming to get out. And so those early indications, those warning systems like smoke detectors are critical to help get folks to safety.
I think we all kind of wondered, you know, how could 7 people, you know, not know that this was going on?
Right. Well, and those are answers. We don't have full answers to that. I mean, of course, we have one survivor, Mr. Smith, and he's given his account of what happened. And you have the video from across the street that shows from that vantage point what happened. But of course, we don't know what was happening in those critical minutes when it went from a spark to a flame to this overwhelming tragic fire.
It's certainly something to think about.
Absolutely. It's scary. I mean, you think in the 2020s, we've moved beyond these kind of tragic events that used to be commonplace 100 years or so ago, that now are rarer, thankfully.
Questions I had, anything to add?
No, I think that's it. Thank you.
All right, folks. So that was obviously the mayor just a short time ago. I want to show you guys back to the images because we're looking at the comments for the first time. We're starting to see some folks who are questioning the facts. Let's put it as it is.
And I mean, this is coming from the state fire marshal. This is video. Obviously, we're not going to see the whole video. It would take too long. So this is timestamps of the important moments from that full video.
And keep in mind, this is still an active investigation. So as far as we know, that is why we're getting these screen grabs of said video. I want to see the video. You want to see the video. We want to see exactly how all of this unfolded. And we say that with respect to this family. It's just because out of pure knowledge of wanting to know how to prevent something like this from happening and looking at the video to learn from this, right? And obviously for our job to report it. But we're getting screen grabs right now. And so that's what we have with which to work. So I want to go back to that. And you just heard the mayor talk about it briefly. He said that there are some answers, not all answers. And that is why, with respect, we get it. So so many people, so many folks still watching us, 5,000 folks watching us at one point throughout this Facebook Live, still having questions about how could this have happened? Why didn't anyone know? 7 people were in the home. That is something that Fire Marshal Steve Jones answered, said he does not have all the answers right now. In fact, there's still an investigation underway.
I want to get to the time stamp showing. I think the biggest one is when the dad tries running back in, because a lot of people had questions about that.
So this is the moment that the father is seen dropping down. So I want to show you the difference in images here. There's this image at 6:11:54, someone hanging from the window. 6:11:57, someone dropping from the window. It is really hard to see. In fact, I'm trying to see it on. I'm trying to look on this end. Yeah, I don't. And Lauren is right next to me here. And again, this is a video that has, we got screen grabs
from the church across the street.
From the church across the street on LaPorte Avenue. And so this is the moment between this picture and this picture. Investigators say a man fell from that window, dropped from that window after hanging from that window. So we're going to keep going here because I think this next couple of images will help. This is about a minute later. There's a picture you can clearly see what investigators say is David Smith, the father who we just heard from a short time ago, looking to go back inside.
Right.
So you're seeing that there on the left side of your screen in that image. You see it right near the corner on the left side. There's an image of someone who is facing the home, and they say father is seen. They put that caption, try to go back in.
Well, now you know it was impossible to try to get back in on that first floor because the fire started in that family dining room on the first floor in the back, but this fire spread so quickly that trying to get in through the front door would have been utterly impossible.
It would have been. It would have been, and I think that's the one thing people, I don't think we knew that. I think this is something that we're just discovering. So that is something unique. I am going to the next photo here that we have. So I want to go back and be transparent and show everything as we're doing it. So this is what you just saw there. I'm going to go to the next image. And again, we're seeing this for the first time as well. So this is, wow. Okay, so 6:12:53. Dad is, and I'm going to get rid of this lower third once more so you guys can see it. Dad is trying to go back in the home. He does not make it inside the home for obvious reasons. 6:12:53. If I'm doing my math correctly, 2 minutes, almost 2 minutes, just shy of 2 minutes later, this is what the house looks like.
Yeah.
That home is
up in flames.
Yeah.
And I mean, even fire crews aren't even there yet. I mean, this is how fast this is moving. It said by the time that fire crews got there, the fire had fully engulfed the house.
If you look closely, there's much more action happening on the corner next door. You're starting to see images right in front of the fire.
Several people trying
to access that home. This is when the 911 call is made. Not sure where the first 911 call from, whether it was inside the home, next door, the father. We don't know. That is part of this investigation. We just do not know. And then we have 2 more photos to show. So this is at 6:14. This is
fire department
almost 2 minutes later. Fire department is dispatched. So we've gone from 6:08 to 6:16. Crucial 8 minutes. And in this case, deadly. 8 minutes have gone by. Fire department has been dispatched.
Yeah.
This is something I know as journalists, our ears perk up because, I mean, 8 minutes from moment that you first see the fire, 2 minutes past that first 911 call to fire officials being dispatched.
Because and then when is the next one is when I believe fire crews
6:16
arrive.
and then 6:17.
Wow, they arrive within 1 minute.
They arrive within a minute.
It's too late, sadly, at that point.
And you're seeing the images at the top there.
It took so long to make that first 911 call. We heard from Chief Buchanan who said, listen, our crews responded swift and professionally, and you could see within 1 minute of that first 911 call being made, they arrived on scene. But when that first spark was seen at around 6:08, it's those crucial moments, right? A smoke detector, you think, right?
It is hard to
gone out and
yeah, it's really hard to conceptualize that. So a few things I want to, and I'm calling an audible here. If you're okay with this, Mark Peterson is about to go live here momentarily, and I want to see if we'll be able to take that live really quickly.
Okay.
And then after that, we will wrap up here because we are both assigned to other stuff. So we're going to do that momentarily. So I just wanted to give you guys a lay of the land. In about 5 minutes, we're going to go to a live feed of our noon show.
Yeah.
And if you can, Lauren, some of the key takeaways.
Yeah,
if you're just joining us, some of those key
recap it.
takeaways, I think is something that a lot of folks watching right now had questions about. Some of those
Yeah.
key takeaways. If we look at some of the horrific images from that night.
Yeah, we had Steve Jones, State Fire Marshal, laying out 4 key findings. 1, we can confirm the fire started downstairs in the family dining room with all family members, 7 people, upstairs. 2, a lot of discussions about smoke detectors. We just talked about that. They cannot determine if any went off during event. Witnesses never heard one. Dad said he never heard one, nor did dispatchers hear it when 911 was called. We know electrical issues have been found in the house in the past. I know our partners at the South Bend Tribune did a massive investigative piece on this. We know the house had failed several inspections, but still, this cannot be linked as the direct cause of this fire right now. And then the last major takeaway, probably the most important for our community, is that no criminal activity or arson found.
Okay.
So again, that clears.
Yeah.
I think it answers some questions.
Some questions
from
for
the
sure.
community, you
Karen
can
or
say.
someone, I'm going to ask you, what is the patch to get to the studio, the main camera there? Do you guys know what that is? To get to the studio to see Caroline and the news show. Tuner 2?
Two.
Tuner 1. Thank you.
I also want to mention too, Steve
Yeah.
Jones said they've spent thousands of hours on this investigation, on this
he-
tragedy,
yeah.
leaving no stone unturned in the quest for answers, because they know this is a case that has deeply affected our community and beyond.
Yeah, it really has. I'm going to ask you to be ready, Lauren. This is
Okay.
the one. These two, as opposed to those two. These
Okay.
two would be the ones
Got
we'll
it.
turn up here momentarily. We have to play director, producer, and talent on this thing, but this is a way to give you the news right away, immediately in your hands. I know you guys are watching this again on Facebook and wherever you get your news, and on platform and streaming as well. I wrote something down here. The cause is undetermined, which you said is not uncommon.
Especially when it comes to fire investigations. We know obviously things burn.
Yeah, and seriously, that can be crucial. The other thing is the evidence doesn't point definitively in one direction or the other, but one thing that they did say, and this is what I want to bring up here, this is important, Fire Marshal said there's no criminal activity to be believed involved here, no arson to be expected or anticipated in this investigation. Even though technically this investigation is ongoing, this investigation continues. One of the things I want you guys to know, if you're just joining us, about 15 minutes ago, we saw David Smith. He was in that room where this news conference was, and he said he had to walk out at one point. We also saw some members of the, as I said, clergy here in South Bend, including those who had a huge role in organizing the memorial service that we were able to cover.
And a GoFundMe page for a community donation fund, I should
Lynn
say,
Coleman, yeah,
for
community,
the
yep.
father of this.
Lynn Coleman was
the
there,
kids.
and in fact, he mentioned Lynn Coleman by name and said he's one of the many people in that have supported him. And then he choked up a little bit, and then he started to say, you know what, I got to say something. And he started to choke up again, and that's when he was ushered out.
Can we talk about something else?
Yeah, and can we talk about something else was the exact quote. And I don't know what he was going to say, but then he was ushered out, and I was really curious about what he was going to say, because let's be honest, he's been under a lot of scrutiny from this community because there's so many unanswered questions.
Right.
Lynn Coleman, under a lot of scrutiny in this community because, again, unanswered questions. A lot of folks surrounding this man under scrutiny, and the investigation itself coming under scrutiny as well.
I think people had questions, and like I said earlier, when you think about 7 people in one house, one person makes it out, there are questions, especially when it's your babies upstairs. But now we can say, from the State Fire Marshal, no criminal activity found in this case. So you know, Dad has gone through this tragedy. He's still going through the heartbreak of losing 6 kids.
This is right here, Mark Peterson, who is standing by.
Okay.
He is standing by right now, so we're going to check back in with him in a second. He's going to give us a live report here on the air in just a moment. So a moment, literally a minute from
These
now,
two,
we're going to
Josh,
check
right?
in,
I'm
and
sorry.
those are the two. Yep. Those are the two, absolutely. And then once we hear from Mark Peterson, a little bit of an update on what we already told you. He's going to put it into 2 minutes, and then we're going to say goodbye for now, because we've got to work on the shows for tonight.
Yeah.
And we're assigned to some other stuff as well for the day. So again, this is just our way of bringing you the news right away, because we know this is a big story. We followed it. I say
I believe
this.
we have thousands of views even right now.
Yeah,
this is
and a lot of
something
comments.
people have been waiting for. We know. We've had those questions too.
Not just in
for almost a
Indiana,
year.
right? I mean, we've gotten calls already. We can tell you this. Our newsroom has gotten calls from different news organizations and CNN and others as well, because they have been following this. Chicago has been following this closely.
When you have 6 kids dying in a fire, I mean, it's something that stays with you.
Yeah, it's a big story. We're going to check in now with Caroline Clapp, who is our noon show anchor, and she is going to be giving us a little bit of a brief wrap and then tossing things to Mark Peterson. That's what we're about to dip into right now. We wanted to give you that as a setup. We're about a couple seconds away from that. Again, this is an update on the Smith6 fire that we've been telling you about, and it's something we've been following for months since it happened back in January.
Finally, some answers for our community.
Yeah, so we're going to dip into that now.
Breaking news from 16 News Now.
Thank you for joining us. Just moments ago, we learned new information about that deadly house fire on LaPorte Avenue in South Bend. That's the fire that killed 6 children back in January. Our Mark Peterson was at this morning's press conference where city leaders and the Indiana State Fire Marshal announced updates on the investigation. Mark.
Correct. They've been at it for, 11 months now, putting together this investigation. Bottom line, the cause undetermined. There's simply no evidence that definitively points to one particular cause. You have to wonder, there were 7 people in the house that day. How could they not know? Could they not get out? They did show some surveillance footage from a church across the street that pretty much shows the fire, when seen in the back window, a glow to it being raging, is about 10 minutes in length. And it did also show that the family was upstairs and the fire was downstairs. The fire marshal today sharing some key findings of the report. Let's hear from him now.
Number 1, the fire started in the family and dining room area of the house. Number 2, we know there has been a lot of discussion and curiosity about smoke detectors and whether they worked. While some were found in a home, we cannot determine what sounded, if anything sounded, during the event. Witnesses on the scene never heard a smoke alarm. The father did not hear a smoke alarm, nor could a smoke alarm be heard on the 911 call that originated from the house. Number 3, there were electrical items that were identified as potential ignition sources, but it could not be proved definitively. And then number 4, there is no evidence of criminal activity or arson that was found in the investigation.
So after 11 months, again, the cause undetermined, and the results are shared today. Even the father was here. We'll hear from him on later shows. But 11 months have passed, but still, this is a very emotional issue. There's no scars.
Okay, so that was our Mark Peterson and giving some of the updates there, and it is again one of those stories that just it punches you in the gut, because at the end of the day, we don't know what the cause is. We don't know what started this. We don't know what may have started this. We know this house was under scrutiny because of the fact they had electrical issues, which the South Bend Tribune had some indefatigable reporting about. But
6 children were lost at the end of the day.
At the end of the day, 6 kids gone, and we're trying our best to make sure this doesn't happen again as journalists. To make sure that we do our best to inform and educate folks on the importance of fire safety and fire prevention.
Yeah, and we heard from Mark Peterson, who teased ahead right to our evening coverage, where we're going to hear more from the dad. We're going to have the full recap of everything we've been talking about in real time as we're hearing it from both the State Fire Marshal and the Chief.
Yeah, we will have that, of course, and throughout the night here, starting at 4 o'clock on Channel 16, where you get your news. You can also watch us on streaming and at WNDU.com. You can stream there as well. Lauren Moss, thank you. And we know that this is not an easy story for you, so we want to thank you as well for tuning in. Joshua Short of the Newsroom, we are signing off for now. We are going to leave you with the pictures of the 6 faces, those 6 kids, because we know that's what, at the end of the day, it's about them, and they lost their lives, and we don't want to forget them. These 6 kids, the Smith6,